All right, so it is time for the second installment of Getting to Know. Today is Aaron Law, aka the Empowered Farmer. I'm excited for this conversation. One of my fellow team members. So if you're ready, Aaron, we're just going to dive straight in and get going.
Do it.
All right, so just start getting to know you a little bit better, and then we'll dive into some more deep stuff. I know you are a third generation farmer, correct?
That's correct.
And then you kind of did a transition from like engineering to farming. Can you just do like a brief description of kind of that background and that journey for anyone that might not know?
Yep. So 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, I left an engineering career, and I was there for 11 years. Just came to the point where I felt like the work I was doing was just silly and just bullshit, really, and had enough of that. I kind of wallowed in fear for probably a year or so in that process, afraid to leave comfort, right, and go somewhere that was uncertain. And so I left, came back to the family farm because there was an opportunity there. My parents were looking to retire, and I came back with the intent to learn every part of the business all over again because I'd been away from it for years after going to college, and figure out if it was a good fit for me. And I had the intentions of doing that all within 1 year, and that ended up being 3 years because, again, I was stuck in this point of indecision and fear and just, in hindsight, realizing it was all bullshit. And I jumped in 4 years ago, whole hog, took on lots of debt and lots of responsibility, but it's been well worth it. I've owned my farm now for 4 years.
That's awesome, man. Would you say that there was a part of you that kind of growing up around the farm, was there a part of you that like didn't want to be a farmer? Is that kind of why you went into engineering, or kind of how did that happen?
Yeah, there was no real resistance on my part at that time in my life on being a farmer. It was all my parents knew. It was all my grandparents knew. They had all come from farming backgrounds. I guess at the time, I had the desire to work in the environmental field, to, I guess, help clean up the world. That was the mindset I had at the time. And once I got into that industry, I realized it wasn't quite what I expected or wanted out of life. So that's why I left.
Is that mentality something you've brought back to farming with you, that kind of environmental, clean style of thing?
Absolutely. Like after that's my educational background, that was my former work background. So I brought back that mentality and that intention to, do things through all facets of our business, upstream and downstream of our business, to lessen our impact on the natural world. And that translates into a lot of realities on our farm. And we built a brand new facilities 2 years ago to house the hens on our farm. I'm an egg farmer, and we utilize a lot of innovative technology in those facilities to reduce our impact.
Yeah, I love it, man. So you call yourself the Empowered Farmer, and I'm interested to know, like, empowered is such a great word. Like, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to be the empowered farmer? And perhaps how can the rest of us become empowered in our own life?
Yep. What that means to me is to live my life and run my business beyond my fears, essentially. That title, if you will, call it that, just came to mind me right around the time that I just decided to blast through those fears and decide to buy the farm. And it just made sense to me, and I decided to sort of market myself as that. And it's the potential possibilities for that brand and that idea are always growing and changing. It's exciting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love, that fear is a little bit of an obsession of mine. So kind of, what do you mean, just so everybody's clear, what do you mean when you say living beyond fear? Like, that's such a great statement. So everybody's kind of on the same page. How does one live beyond?
Yeah, great question, Anthony, and I'll explain how I view it. When I say I live beyond my fears, That doesn't mean that I'm ignoring my fears or avoiding them or running away from them. It's that I'm acknowledging my fears and realizing that for the most part, 9 times out of 10, those fears are perceived and not real, not based in reality. And as our mentor Brian Rose said, mentioned that Ido Portal quoted, um, you know, we should dance with their fears. You know, you use that as leverage to get to know our fears and to move through them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love it. I think kind of the way I look at fear a lot of times, I think fear, as we describe it in society, is just a product of our ego, and our ego kind of creating that resistance of change and things. And I've actually dedicated this year to facing fears, and I'm going to be doing that in a lot of different interesting ways. Just challenging myself to really, as Brian Rose would say, go to where the fear is, and kind of inspire people to do the same thing. I think like you've had a speech talking about using fear as your compass, and kind of using fear as that direction you should go, which also reminded me of Will Smith had as a really good speech about skydiving. He
Yep.
talked about how like getting all the way up to it, you have to watch it. He does it way better than I do, but essentially he gets that moment where he's on the plane and he's got to jump out. He's like, oh shit, I really have to do this. He says, you jump out and you just have that moment of pure fear, and then as soon as you're out there, it's just pure bliss, just this magical thing. And he goes on to say that's what's usually on the other side of fear. The most blissful things, the things that you truly want out of life, are usually on that other side of the fear. So I really love that idea. I think fear is something we undervalue and kind of paint in a bad light in our society. So
Yep.
that's definitely a good message to have. And then let's see. So your mantra for your company is helping farmers and entrepreneurs become freedompreneurs. And I'm
Yep.
just interested in seeing like what exactly is a freedompreneur. How does
Yeah. That it's good that you brought that up because I know I need to update my marketing. Um, that statement or that slogan I created almost 2 years ago because I had the intention of at that time doing business coaching for uh, for business owners in the agricultural community. And what I came to discover was that maybe a lot of farmers weren't open to business coaching or mentoring. So obviously my business model has changed, and now I find myself migrating more to helping entrepreneurs, not just agricultural farmers, but entrepreneurs in many different businesses live beyond their fears. Does that
excellent?
make sense?
Yeah. So what would you say? Say I myself am a budding entrepreneur. Let's put it that way. I've had more failures than successes, but what would you say just as a point of advice? Like what's a good first step to take towards becoming what you call a freedompreneur? Like what is there kind of some guidelines or some questions that you follow or anything like that that can be
Yeah.
helpful for any people that are wanting to pursue that?
Well, I'll explain to you what a freedompreneur means to me. It's someone who does what they want, when they want, and they work with who they want um, in something that lights them up in their lives. Not in maybe working in the corporate world where you're stuck in a cubicle all day. Maybe that's not for you. Maybe you want to do something else that lights you up. So it doesn't necessarily, when you use that word or you hear that word freedompreneur, I don't mean, you know, to me, that word doesn't conjure up the image of someone in a hammock spending 30 hours of their week sipping pina coladas on a beach. It's whatever freedom is for you. Freedom for you could be working as a carpenter 60 to 80 hours a week. If you love what you do, that's freedom for you.
That create your own.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be what is your advice to somebody like as a first step? Like is there what do you say is the most important thing? If there's only one thing that could be done, what is the most important thing taking that first step towards that? Say even if you don't have a company or anything at the moment, you want to start one.
Yeah. first of all, number one is figure out what you really like to do, whatever that is. Um, perhaps it's marketing some sort of personal development program online. Maybe it's, like I said, maybe it's a trade, carpenter, plumber, farming, whatever that is. Figure out what you really like, what lights you up, what makes you, what makes you want to get up in the morning rather than stay in bed and feel a sense of dread when you're going to a job. If that's what you feel, then that's not where you need to go. Second of all, you need to figure out what your customers in that role that you want to serve, that you enjoy, need in the world. Basically, that's what I found. And just to give you an example, when I started on this journey 2 years ago, I wanted to market myself as a business coach, mentor for farmers. And because I liked doing that, I had some experience doing that, and I wanted to share my insight with people. But I found that market wasn't necessarily, that wasn't something I wanted, essentially. So I had to change my focus.
Yeah, I think that's another huge thing that people need to realize. I know in my own life, having ADHD has kind of made it a little bit easier for me, but that ability to not get stuck on one picture of what you think things should be and be willing to adapt and adjust, I think is a very crucial thing that a lot of people miss out on. I know I've been guilty of it. And in the past, I've gotten these ideas. I've dreamed up these big things. Like I wanted to have a nonprofit gym at one point that would help fight obesity and all of these things. And I just had that idea stuck in my head. But that actually kept me from discovering other avenues and looking at other things, because I was just looking at the world through that one scope and that one lens. So I definitely agree that is a very, very crucial thing to have, is just that ability to as my favorite fighter, Conor McGregor, would say, which he also borrowed this quote, is improvise, adapt, and overcome. That's a huge, huge mindset. I absolutely love it. So in your personal or professional life, what would you say has been the biggest challenge that you faced? And how did that kind of change your perspective on life?
I guess the biggest challenge that I faced in recent years that comes to mind was back when I was wallowing in that fear for 3 years on whether or not I should buy the farm. I was really afraid that I wouldn't have any freedom if I was going to be a farmer. Wouldn't have freedom to do the other things that I like to do. And I was afraid of taking on millions of dollars in debt, seeing as how I'd never had borrowed money in my entire life, other than credit cards. It scared the shit out of me to borrow, upwards of $3 million just like that. And yeah, once I just came to this point and realized that where I needed to go was to chase my fears, to follow them. That was kind of a game changer, a turning point for me. Now when I think of new business opportunities, taking on a lot of debt, whether it's for an acquisition or doing an expansion on our business, it doesn't scare me so much anymore. It's really just a numbers game.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big thing for people. Do you have any kind of like framework or questions that you ask yourself when you confront this fear, to really like kind of be like, all right, is this a legitimate fear, or is this just my bullshit ego getting in the way? Like, do you have anything that you kind of work through for that process to make that process a little bit easier?
Yeah, I learned from a really good friend one time, probably about 5 years ago. And I asked her, I said to her, Jenna, how do you make tough decisions in your life? Where you're torn on which way to go. She said to me, and it really stuck with me. She said, I'll think of the decision, the problem that I'm facing, and I'll think of it from the place of my mind. And, for her, when she did that, that's when the fears would come about, that bullshit voice of the ego telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't do something. And then she would think of that problem or that decision from a place of her heart. And the feelings, I guess the inner wisdom that she would get felt more true and genuine and less motivated by fear. And I've reflected back on that conversation I had with that friend many times since then, and it's actually helped guide me through some important decisions and follow the path that should be followed. I think not the path of fear.
Yeah, I like that. Especially you kind of pulling your mind out of that area of reason, kind of coming back to your passion a little bit, and
Yeah,
really using that as your focus. I definitely like that approach to things.
there's a place for reason and logic, but there's also a place for our intuition too.
Absolutely, it's a balance, and it's not an easy balance to maintain. I know I have been playing around with different things, but to try and find that balance. But I've realized really to trust my gut when I have that feeling down inside to just what, go for it, and not even sometimes not even think about the consequences or what can really happen, and just dealing with them as they come. Kind of it's helped me really to develop that creative problem solving rather than focusing on all the problems that could happen and all the things that do scare me because of those problems. I just know that, okay, I want to go in this direction. I'm going to go that way. Problems will arise. I'll figure them out when they come. And I think that's really helped me just to start taking action a lot. So I like that. I like that analogy very, very much. So let's just have a little bit of fun here for a minute.
Okay.
What would you say is your fondest childhood memory? That one picture that sticks back with you, brings you happiness, that warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, fondest childhood memory is I think I was 12 years old. I think it was in 1990, I believe.
The year I was
It was
born.
2 years. Pardon me.
So that was the year I was born. Not to make you feel old.
Okay, you're just a spring chicken. Um, the year was around 1990, I believe. My dad and I went on a ski trip, just me and him, to the Canadian Rocky Mountains, which is at the other end of the country from where I am. I'm in New Brunswick, which is on the Atlantic coast. And we went there. It was 2 years after the Calgary Olympic Winter Games, 1988. Calgary's in Alberta, which is where the Rocky Mountains are. So I went there, and my uncle at the time was a bartender at one of the big ski resorts out there. So we stayed at, on slope lodging up around probably 8,000 feet elevation. Go at your doorstep, and there's the mountain. That's probably one of the biggest childhood memory that comes to mind. It's really strong to me right now. It was the first time I'd ever flown an airplane as well. So that was one of the reasons it was memorable. But it was a really great trip, just me and my dad.
Yeah. Are you and your family really close? Like you have that good, strong connection with family as you were growing up and everything? I know there's a lot of different family dynamics that go on.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a really great relationship. I wouldn't say we're super touchy feely, hugging, every day or multiple times a day. But yeah, we've got my parents are semi-retired from the business. They're actually my employees now, which is kind of weird. And
That's a
and
fun
we just
dynamic.
have a great relationship. They're not there because I want them to be or because they have to be. They're there because they want to be. And they actually physically live in the middle of my farm. I live like 400 meters down the road from my farm, but it's just, it's enjoyable to work with him like that on a daily basis for the most part, and just I continually learn from my father.
What was that like making that transition from father son to son employee? Was that ever weird at all?
Not really,
Yeah.
not for me. It all kind of sunk in when 4 years ago when I formally bought the business. As you can imagine, there's a lot of details and legal work that's entailed with something like that. We spent like 6 hours at the lawyer's office, going signing all these mountains of papers, and it's just a process you go through with a big transition like that, a change in ownership, and it just really hit home at that time. I wasn't afraid of it. It was just a new experience for me.
That's cool. I
Yeah.
like that. I couldn't imagine having to like be the boss of my own father. My family has control tendencies, all of us. It's something I've battled with my whole life, but I can already see how that would go out just from working with my father on different small projects and things. He's a very meticulous person, and I'm not. I'm the
Yep.
all right. Let's just figure it out as we go. So I don't even want to imagine what that would be like.
I find it funny, like my father will often, he'll text me, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we buy this? Can we buy that for the bar, the business or the farm? And, I just kind of laugh at it. I appreciate that he, involves me in those decisions and whatnot. But, I'm like, go ahead, do what you need to do. You don't need to ask me for all these little things.
That's awesome. So, what would you say is the craziest thing you've ever done? Have you ever broken the law? Gone streaking across the campus? Like, what's the craziest Aaron Law moment ever?
There's been quite a few, but the one that stands out to me happened in August of 2016, where I nearly died by almost sliding off of a mountain in Alberta, in the Canadian Rockies. Yeah.
That sounds like a fun story. How did that come about?
Well, I was climbing. You may have heard of Lake Louise. It's a very beautiful, prominent tourist attraction in Alberta, Canada. This beautiful alpine lake, huge backdrop of mountains, and there's a big mountain at the end of that lake. It's called Mount Victoria, and I climbed it August of 2016. And I went with a guide and one other climber. It was the end of August. We hiked up to our base camp, which was at about 10,000 feet elevation. Spent the night there. Went to do the summit the next day. Incredible weather. We start climbing at like 2 a.m. because we want to get up across the snow slopes before the heat of the sun hits them and they become wet and more dangerous. And probably about 2/3 of the way to the summit, just after sunrise, we're traversing this steep snow slope. I'm talking steep, like probably 75 degrees. We're roped in together. We've got mountaineering axes and crampons on our mountaineering boots, and we're just kind of picture your what your body form would be on a ladder. That's how we were on the side of this snow slope, sidestepping about a 30-40 foot section. Anyway, my technique was a bit rusty because I hadn't done a mountaineering trip in about a year, and basically my heels were too low and my crampons were not gripping like they should, and I started to slide. And there was nothing to stop me.
Were you tied together with your?
We were.
So you put everybody in danger.
Pardon me?
So you put everybody in danger.
I did, and it brought me to real quick. I corrected my technique real quick, but in that moment, reflecting back, I wasn't really afraid. I was just so focused and present. Self-preservation kicking in, right? And my guide, through the whole experience, I discovered that my guide was a real dick. And he started shouting, not just for this moment, but several moments and instances through this trip, but he started shouting profanities at me and everything at this moment, telling me not to panic. And I'm like, dude, I'm not panicking. Maybe, I don't know, that's how he read me at the time, but that wasn't my perception at the time. So that was a pretty crazy moment. Yeah.
Have you ever had just that, any brushes with the law? I'm curious. I know I've had a few little speeding tickets. I think everybody's had little things, but what's the worst criminal offense you ever done?
I've never even had like a speeding ticket. I've never really had any brushes with the law.
Man,
maybe I should with my last name,
Yeah, or maybe not. Maybe it's the last name that'll get you out of it. Who knows?
Maybe.
That's awesome. So, I just want to be cognizant of your time and everybody else's in the group's time. So I have decided to borrow some of Tim Ferriss's rapid fire questions. Kind of
nice.
Because I kind of like the way he does it. And so, you ready? We're gonna do rapid fire.
The answers have to be rapid fire too?
No, take your time.
Yeah, that's
This is
exactly what
conversation, right?
Ferris is.
So, what are the three books that have most influenced your life?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. The first one that comes to mind is by Eckhart Tolle, a Canadian spiritual leader and author. And the name of the book, it was his second book. I think it's called A New Earth. Yeah, that's it.
What was the name of it?
Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. That's the subtitle. I read that book back in 2009, 2008, 2009. I was in a bad relationship at the time. I was mentally, I was in a bad, dark place. And that book was given to me by actually the woman I was in the bad relationship with. It was given
That's
to
ironic.
her from a friend, a coworker, and that's what sort of brought about that aha moment of self-awareness and how I started to embark down this path, my own path of spiritual discovery. And once, you know, it's like the Matrix. Once you've seen the Matrix, you can't unsee it, right? That's how I
Right.
felt once I read that book. Once you have that first insight in your own self-awareness and being self-aware, you can't become unself-aware. It's the first one that comes to mind. Um, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Many years ago, my dad took a Dale Carnegie program. So he's got all the books, and I dove into that book a number of years ago, and it's it's dated. You know, it was written, I think, back in the 30s, but
Yeah.
it's all still very relevant.
Yeah,
The
and it's very
principles and the
easy to
ideas.
read. Super easy to
Yeah,
read. You can literally read it in one or two sittings. It's a very good book. I like that book a lot.
yeah,
Good starting place for anybody that's wanting to build influence. Uh,
yeah. And the third book that comes to mind, you'll enjoy this, was Tim Ferriss's book that he wrote, I think, in 2007, 4 Hour Work Week. Um, I did the audiobook actually. I haven't actually read the print book, but when the first time I heard that, it blew my mind, like just the strategies and ideas and insights from not only the author but other people that he refers to in the book. Um, the strategies to cut out the bullshit in your life, and especially being a business owner, how I can cut out a lot of crap in my life to free up time for what really matters. I'll give you an example. Email autoresponders. That changed my life over a year ago. It just eliminated a lot of the time that I spent on, chasing emails every day.
yeah, yeah, that is a great book. Anybody that is doing anything kind of entrepreneurial or any kind of business is definitely helpful. Teaches you how to really get that focus, create automation. Really, the difference between efficiency and efficacy, which is a subtle difference. Efficiency is just doing things in the best way possible, and efficacy is doing things the right way, the most effective way, or not the most effective way. That kind of defeats the purpose. But it's a very good book, one that I am currently rereading again and going through. Let's see. Next question. How has a failure or a parent failure set you up for success? And do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Parent failure. You mean a failure that my parents did?
No, a failure or something that at the time you thought was a failure.
Okay. Oh, a parent. Okay, gotcha. um, can you repeat the question again, please?
So, how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for success? And do you have any a certain failure that you would say is like your favorite kind of failure looking back?
Hmm. Something comes to mind. It's not necessarily a failure. Um, I was at an agricultural conference in 2014, February 2014, and it was for all types of farmers across Canada. And I was there, and I just kind of stumbled into this meeting that a fellow egg farmer colleague told me about, and it was the first kickoff meeting for an young egg farmers of Canada program, like leadership program. So I went to this meeting uninvited, and I wasn't told to leave. But anyway, I became a part of that program. Just a great learning experience where I learned about all different facets of our industry nationally, provincially, and then not only that, but the network that I got to know within the egg farming community and beyond really helped me grow and contribute to that group, more than I expected. Wasn't really a failure, but it's something I just kind of bumped into, unbeknownst, and I seized the opportunity.
Kind of the wrong place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, what is a unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
I like I like inflicting pain on myself. No, I don't mean that in the way of cutting my wrists and that kind of stuff. I mean in the way of, for example, I live 400 meters down the road from my farm. I would rather walk than drive on a day that's minus 20 degrees Celsius, which I did a number of times this week. I like that. That is, it's a bit stoic in nature, right? As you can relate to
Exactly.
exposing yourself to some physical stress and mental stress, and I like doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
The whole mountain climbing story I just told you.
Embracing it's embracing the voluntary discomfort. So when life puts discomfort on you, it's not even anything near as harrowing. I can relate. That stoicism is another passion of mine.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
in the past 5 years, what new belief or maybe a behavior or a habit has most improved your life?
The magic of thinking big. Yeah.
Can you expand upon that?
Yeah. Um, you might find this hard to believe, and some of our listeners might as well. Um, I've gotten a lot of insight out of watching the Dan Pena videos from his documentary and then the bonus videos and whatnot. Not in his vulgarity, and he is a bit of an asshole in a lot of the ways he carries himself, but his core message, really it resonates with me, and has impacted me. Is just thinking bigger, you know, thinking without fear.
Yeah,
Not necessarily without fear, but using that again as a guidepost, a compass.
yeah,
Yeah. Does that make sense?
absolutely. I definitely have kind of a weird fascination with Dan Pena after seeing those things. He's a complete asshole. He's a complete sociopath. I don't agree with a lot of his things, but I think, like you said, that core message, when you kind of peel back the onion, at the end of the day, he truly does, I believe, want to help people, want to make them successful. He's just not going to baby you into doing it. He's going to just tell you how the fuck it is, and you can either do it or you can't. But the dude, he gets cut straight through the bullshit, and I can respect that in a way. Don't agree that it's necessarily the best way to do it, but I think it can be effective for some people.
Yeah.
So, let's go to the next question. In the last 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to, be that distractions or invitations, etc.? And what new realization or approach has helped uh, that?
Yeah. I've become better at saying no to things that don't excite me. This is some more insight from Tim Ferriss that you'll appreciate. I believe he says it in one of his books. When he's faced with an opportunity, I think much from the same way now. When I think of an opportunity that's presented to me, um, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a hell no.
Yeah.
I just finished a mentoring program a month ago where I was helping mentor small business owners in my community and helping them to grow in their businesses. Great program. I was doing it for 8 weeks, I guess, and finished in September and finished in October. They're starting another session in February. They wanted me to be a part of it. Wasn't a hell yeah for me, so I said no.
Uh,
I enjoyed the experience, but um, it just wasn't a hell yeah for me. So
yeah, I think that's a big problem a lot of people have. That's why I like that question from Tim Ferriss. It's just I know I've been guilty of just being like, yeah, being that yes man, but definitely eliminating that middle ground in your decision making can be huge. I read an example today actually of a CEO. As his company grew bigger, he started letting the employees take over the interview process for new hires, and he told them just to rate the new hires on a scale of 1 to 10, with the exception that they could not use the number 7. And it was very interesting because it's easy to say yes to a 7, but when you eliminate a 7, you have to choose between a 6 or an 8. That decision making becomes a lot easier. And I thought that was a very cool and effective way of kind of making those decisions on a broader scale. So I love the hell yes and the hell no analogy as well. I think we definitely have to be cognizant of how we make decisions, and being able to make decisions quickly. Napoleon Hill talks about it. Tim Ferriss talks about it. Most of the successful people is being able to make decisions fast is one of the biggest keys to success. The last question before we wrap things up: when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or have lost your focus temporarily, what do you do? If it's helpful, like what kind of questions do you ask yourself?
Quite often, I'll just come back to my breath. It's a form of meditation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come back to that which always exists, and that which is your true peaceful nature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I like that.
Often, I'll go for a walk too. I find that helps.
Yeah, I think going for a walk is something that is extremely undervalued. I think people see it as maybe a waste of time or whatever, but whenever I get like overwhelmed, that is exactly what I do oftentimes. It sucks right now because it's cold, so I don't really walk as much as I did. Because I don't think it's as cold here as it is where you are, but I am not the largest fan of walking around in the cold. But in nice weather, I will wander for hours sometimes and just use that. There's actually a walking meditation that you can do that I kind of like to do with that, and just let your mind go free. I think it's Nassim Taleb. He says he doesn't trust anybody that won't go for a slow walk from his book Anti-Fragility, which I think is hilarious, but kind of holds a lot of value.
Yep.
And definitely, I definitely like that you brought up meditation. I think meditation is hugely crucial, something that I've been practicing on and off for the past couple of years now. Before we go, is there any like one thought that you want to leave our fellow Speak to Inspire people with? Maybe a point of motivation, anything, a quote that you like right now?
Yeah. Something that there's a commencement speech that Steve Jobs did to, I think, Stanford University a number of years ago. And you've probably seen it perhaps yourself. And in that speech, he refers to, basically remember the fact that you're going to die someday. And, I reflect back to those few lines of that speech. And when I do, it helps motivate me or push me if I'm stumbling on a decision point of some sort. And just, make the decision whatever way it falls and get on with it. Because I have a lot of good things I want to do in the world and a fixed amount of time in the physical world. So get it done.
Absolutely. That is a hugely powerful thing. And another thing that ties back to Stoicism, one of Marcus Aurelius talks about the death meditations, and there's all kinds of studies now that show that just actually thinking about death over the course of the day can greatly improve everything from your happiness to your decision making to all kinds of things. So I really like that quote. I'm glad that we got to do this today. I've enjoyed it. We will definitely have to do it again and kind of dive deeper into some other things. Maybe you can teach us a little bit more about egg farming in the future. And I'd definitely like to know more about the climbs and stuff like that. But that's all the time we have for today. And I look forward to the future. All the rest of you, Speak to Inspire people, be ready, because I'm coming for you all next. I want to get to know everybody. And I want this to be the most insane year for all of us, collectively and individually. So we will see you all next time. Boom.
Awesome.